This conference will now be recorded.
Yes, thanks for the reminder. There we go.
Perfect. Okay. Good evening, Council. If I can get a mover and a seconder to open this special meeting of Council, please. Grego and Peter. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Peter Kistemaker. Be it resolved that we do call this special meeting of Council to order on Monday, July 5th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Those in favor? And that's carried. None opposed. Now we'll continue on for the approval of the agenda. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda and John. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Peroff. Be it resolved that Council does hereby approve the agenda as presented. Those in favor? And that's carried, none opposed. Okay, item number 4, we have disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof, or conflict of interest. Council, you can declare now or any time throughout the meeting. There being none right now, we'll continue on. So we have the first presentation is from BDO Canada, and have they arrived yet, Gail? Okay, so I want to welcome Nathan Dool to our council meeting.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, Nathan. Do you have a camera? Do you want to turn your camera on as well?
Yeah. Let me get this camera going here.
Is it warm in Sault Ste. Marie tonight?
Oh, it's raining for most of the day.
Oh, raining. Okay, we've had high temperatures and humid here.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you could send it our. You could send it our way because it's a little bit cool actually.
Okay.
So I'm just having some trouble. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yeah, I think you can. We've made you presenter.
Oh,
so you should
there we go. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, so I welcome you to our meeting, and you can just take it away, Nathan. And there you are.
Okay, I just gotta figure out which screen you're going to be able to see here. Okay. Sorry. I seem to run into all sorts of different types of internet communications and whatnot, and I don't use this actual one very often, but it looks pretty straightforward. So I'm more used to Zoom and Teams, but this should be all right. Seems to be working pretty well. So I'll just start right into it. I know you have another, I believe you have another presentation tonight, and I certainly don't want to run into their time. I have been known to talk. So if anybody does have any questions, if you could leave them till the end, and then I'll be happy to go through them and answer them. So today I'm going to go through the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020 for the Township of Hornepayne. And obviously this was a strange year. COVID certainly had its impact on everybody and every organization, and municipalities were not immune to it. I have done several presentations now for municipalities, and you know, the amount of impact of COVID-19 certainly varies between them. You know, and I think we'll see some differences, but a lot of similarities with the prior year as well in Hornepayne. So, you know, a lot of things are quite consistent. So, but I'll jump right into the statements. So, Page 4 on the screen is our audit opinion. So this is no change from the prior year. This is what we call an unmodified or clean audit opinion. So we found no issue in the financial statements, in the accounting records that we weren't able to rectify and adjust for. So this is a clean audit opinion. Basically, we have indicated that our opinion is that there are no material misstatements in these financial statements. A material amount is an amount we consider that the user would likely see to be significant. In the current year, we set our materiality at $80,000. So basically, we're saying that these financial statements are correct within $80,000. I'm just going to go down to the statement of, oh boy, sorry, I'm just trying to move something here. But I'm just going to go down to the statement of, oh boy, sorry, I think I got this now. I'm going to move that over there. Okay, now I can see fully. So I'm just going to go into the statement of operations for the year. So the biggest source of revenues for the township is actually from taxation. So we do see an increase year to year from just over 1.8 million to just over 1.9 million. And of course, that can be attributed to the tax increase during the year. So a very, very minor change year to year in overall tax revenues. The next biggest sources of revenues for the township are in the grants area, which would be in the federal and provincial grants. So overall, last year we had about $1.5 million in government grants. In the current year, we're down to just under $1.2 million. Now, it's going to vary significantly depending on whether there's going to be capital projects. So there wasn't as much large capital projects in the current year. Biggest source of government funding is going to be the OMPF funding that's received on a yearly basis, and that's about half of the grant revenue that's received. The other big item in the current year, there was some modernization funding that had actually been received in 2019. It was utilized in 2020, and that's about $240,000 of this amount. And of course, we have various other sources of revenues. A lot of them are under $50,000, but they add up. And there's some amounts that are COVID related. There was some new economic development funds in the current year, and for the new positions that were created in the township. So those are included on those amounts as well. User fees, service charges. So we do see that decline year to year, 1.2 million down to $1.1 million. And included in those user fees are going to be the water and sewer charges. And we also have to remember that certain things wouldn't have operated during COVID. Obviously, we'd see decline in revenues from some of the recreation areas, and that's sort of what I would have expected year to year because of the impact of COVID. License permits and rents. So any rents that are collected, we would include in these amounts. So down 254 to 137 in the current year. Penalties and interest on taxes. This is actually down year to year, 74 down to 56, but we're going to get to the balance sheet and we're going to see a rather dramatic increase in taxes receivable in the current year. And obviously COVID has its impacts. The deferrals of payment terms have its impact, but We did see some properties get cleared off the table in terms of penalties accruing. And we did see a number of properties actually change hands during the year, which is I think is a positive thing to see. Investment income, that's down year to year, 21,000 down to 8,600, and that's all dependent on the investments in GICs and the amounts that the township kept in investments during the year. So the biggest number here, 710,000 donation and others. So we did receive an amount from the nuclear waste organization, and that was $700,000. So we are required to show that as revenue. The amounts were then immediately put into a reserve for the community, and that's why you see a major change year to year in the donation and other. Of course, Hornepayne is no longer in the running for that, but this was the final payment related to that. That you were in the running for. Gain loss on disposal of tangible capital assets and land inventory. So in the current year, there was a significant number of properties that were disposed of in the current year, and basically only one of the properties had a significant amount that was received. There was a number of properties that were basically disposed of at nominal proceeds to the Hornepayne First Nation Inc. I'm not mixing up municipalities, but and they were at $100 each, and I understand the rationale with trying to encourage some development on these properties. And really, the properties aren't doing the township any good owning them without buildings on them, are just being held in the possession of the township. So it is good to see some movement. I mean, the hope is that there will be development on these properties, and you'll see tax revenues come out from the new assessments. Now, going down to expenses, general government went from 828,000 to 960,000 during the year. And I will note that we put all our tax write-offs, account receivable write-offs through this account. So there was significant write-offs and significant adjustments to doubtful accounts during the year, and that's, some of it was actually approved by council as write-offs, and others was, the result of amounts being outstanding for too long a time. So we did see write-offs in the current year of about $160,000. So between write-offs of tax, water receivables, and other receivables, we did see write-offs of $160,000. It is included in general government, and that's why you see the increase year to year. Protection services, very comparable year to year, 333 to 349. That's going to include the fire department and the policing. Transportation services, so that would be all the roads and whatnot, and the maintenance. That was very comparable year to year. And again, from what I've seen in other municipalities, a lot of these areas aren't changing that much. Environmental services, so this would be the water and sewer costs, and this is actually down year to year. And obviously water and sewer systems have a very significant price tag, so it is nice to see the overall expenses in that area stabilizing. Health services, so this is the levy from Porcupine Health Unit, and that's actually down year to year from 51,000 to 43,000. Social and family services is up slightly year to year. and that as well as from the health unit. And obviously it's out of the township's control, but it is good to see that those are from an overall perspective actually declining a bit year to year. This is the area that I've been seeing in most municipalities where there's decline, and that's in the recreation and cultural services. With all the restrictions with COVID, we would expect declines in that area, and certainly the declines are there, almost $300,000 in a decline in expenses year to year. Planning and development. So this is where a lot of the expenditures for the nuclear waste monies, any expenditures related to that would go. And I believe in the current year there was, there was a significant amount for planning included in this, and there was several large reports that were done, so they're included in the planning and development amount. Overall, there is a surplus for the year of $110,000 compared to a surplus of $64,000 in the prior year. Just for comparison, we would have expected a deficit around $6,500. So you actually did better than budget. Even with the write-offs that occurred, you were still doing better than what we'd anticipate. So that would be a positive, positive news for the current year. So just to go down to, I'm just going to go down, and there's one. Oh, I went too far. There is an allocation of surplus. So this is the area that shows how the $110,000 was utilized. $474,000 was put in reserve. We had an overall decrease in capital assets through amortization expense. Of course, less any additions. And so we saw that area decline by $483,000. And we see an overall general surplus of $126,000 during the year. So in the old way of doing financial statements, this would have been your overall surplus. It just happens to be quite comparable to the actual surplus. So operationally, we saw a $126,000 surplus and $474,000 put into reserves in the current year. I'm just going to go back to the statement of financial position. So this basically looks at, the assets and liabilities of the municipality at December 31st. So at that date, there was just over $3.1 million in bank accounts that were under the control of the Township of Hornepayne. So that's a significant increase from the prior year, from 2.1 million, so almost $1 million increase. And a lot of that can be attributed to more amounts being put in reserve. There's also a large amount of accounts payable at year end and a large amount in deferred revenue. So basically revenue received in advance of actual use by the municipality. So quite an increase year to year. This is the one that's a little bit troubling, and it's taxes receivable. And we saw that increase from $370,000 at the end of 2019, and we're up near $548,000 at the end of 2020. And that's with a lot of write-offs in the current year. So it is a bit disconcerting. I understand it's COVID, but it is worrying to see that much outstanding for taxes at any one time. To put that in perspective, that's basically 25% of your yearly levy that's outstanding. So the longer it remains outstanding, the harder it is to collect. So obviously it is a concerning area, and I I hope that with COVID and our economy hopefully turning the corner, we'll see improvements in that area. Accounts receivable, we see that down year to year, and that's going to vary significantly based on any grants that are receivable. And we see that decrease, and there wasn't as much grants in the current year as there were in the prior year that were outstanding to be collected. Inventories for resale, so that's mostly gas at the airport that you have in your possession. So very little change year to year. Accounts payable, accrued liabilities. This is an area that increased year to year, 189 to 410. It's all dependent on what projects are going on near year end. In the prior year end, there was not a lot of projects. There were a few additional projects in the current year that were occurring. Deferred revenue. So any revenues that are eligible for deferral that are basically provided by a government organization and not utilized can be set up as deferred at year end. So a lot of this amount, a lot of the 628 is gas tax that we are required to defer. And then we do have some OCIF funding as well, 247,000. And there's also some economic development funding of 144,000. And the final bit of the modernization funding, $237,000 was utilized during the year. So there's just a small bit left from that. Just go back here, long-term debt. So we did see a decrease overall in the long-term debt. There was a new debt that was added during the year, and it was for a new truck. And basically that GMC truck loan is due November 2026. We have 3 other loans that are due between 2026 and 2042. Rather large one, and this would have been for a water project. So that one's at $976,000. Another one at $234,000, and then a final one at $183,000. So we do see the amounts that are payable over the next 5 years, and then thereafter. So total interest for the year that was paid was $49,423 compared to $51,589 in the prior year. So certainly, there is debt in the municipality, but it is within the debt limits that are prescribed. Just touch on a few things, and I've touched on this the last few years, and that's the solid waste closure and post-closure liabilities. I believe that in my perusal of your minutes in 2021, you did enter into an agreement regarding your getting a report regarding your waste management policies, and obviously that's very important because your landfill is reaching the end of its life, and there are significant costs with closing a landfill. The present value of those costs at the date of this report is $480,000. So again, that's based on engineers' estimates. It could come above that, it could come below that, but the key thing is that we need the municipality to be aware that there are significant costs with closing a landfill as well as opening a new landfill. Inventories for resale. So the one thing that the municipality does have is a lot of land that has been taken in, that has been vested through tax registration. So we did see a number of properties being sold this year, which I think is a positive thing, as long as development occurs on those properties. So that decline year to year is what we see in terms of the cost base that has been taken out from the land that's been sold. And tangible capital assets, we do see a decrease year to year, 15.3 million down to 14.7. So it was a relatively light year in terms of capital asset additions versus amortization. So overall capital asset additions in the current year were 261,000, as opposed to amortization, which is the write down of assets over their useful life, and that was 788,000. So on a net basis, you know, we've declined just over $500,000 year to year. Overall, though, the municipality did further increase its accumulated surplus from 15.9 million to just over $16 million at the end of the year. I'm just going to touch on a few of the more important notes. Just down a bit more, touched on that. Note 7 discloses the solid waste closure, post-closure. It is estimated that there is 11% based on the most recent report that indicated capacity, that there's only 11% capacity remaining in the landfill. Hopefully, if you do get some reports done on your waste management, it can sort of indicate a plan going forward. And if the plan indicates that this landfill's life can be extended, then these estimates will change as well, and the liability will also change. Uncertainty due to COVID-19. So we are required to indicate that there is uncertainty with the pandemic and the impacts on the economy. And you know, basically we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. I would say the municipality's done well managing through this crisis, but obviously we do have to indicate that you know, we're not sure what's going to happen in the future. And I will go down to reserves, because I think this is a positive thing. You know, there are a lot of challenges in the township, but currently there's $1.5 million in reserves at the end of December 31st, 2020, compared to just over $1 million in the prior year. And I think that that's you know, that's very important, considering all the needs there are in the community. Infrastructure is a major challenge, and receiving funding for that is a major challenge. So you know, that's obviously a positive thing to see the increase in the reserves. Just to go down to segmented information. So this basically indicates, you know, which areas did well, which areas sort of had some challenges during the year. And I even brought it back to our old way of doing accounting, which is more of a cash basis. So you know, general government did well, $69,000 surplus, even with the write-offs that occurred during the year. And you know, other areas, transportation, that's obviously a difficult area. There were some capital assets purchased during the year, an excavator and a truck, and you know, that's obviously an area that's a challenge in any municipality. Environmental, so this year water and sewer pretty much broke even year to year from what's budgeted to what occurred. Health, social, family, again, pretty much broke even. Cultural, as I indicated, that is one area that most municipalities are seeing surpluses just because of the basically the restrictions and the inability to spend money in certain areas. And then the planning area, this is where the NWMO contribution went, and obviously for the most part there was a small surplus in that area. The last one is the library, and tough year to be a library, but the library did all right. You know, considering everything that's happened, only $11,000 deficit for the year. So considering the challenges that organizations such as libraries face, I think that having a deficit such as $11,000 and $20,000 of it being amortization, which is a non-cash item, is a pretty positive thing for the organization. I'm just going to touch on the management letter. I'm not going to bring up the document, but because I've kind of touched on the items. The biggest item being taxes receivable. It has been a management letter point for many years. There's been improvement some years. COVID-19 obviously threw a wrench into everything, and the hope is in 2021 that those receivable balances will improve dramatically. But obviously, it's hard to judge this year, how much of a long-term impact that increase in taxes receivable is going to have on the municipality, because to be honest, the vesting of properties and the eventual sale of those properties has brought significantly less than the taxes that have accrued on vested properties. And historically it's showing that. So when we lose out on these taxes, a lot of it is gone forever. So that's the biggest point regarding that. And the other area is the landfill, and it sounds like the municipality is making progress in terms of coming up with a plan for that. I know I'm trying to be cognizant of time here, but I'm happy to take any questions now if I can.
Thank you for your presentation, Nathan. And council, is there any questions for Nathan from council on the presentation? Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through Mayor to Nathan. In respect to your comment, I want to expand on the sale of the properties. I think as a municipal council administration, I think we're heading the right way. However, we can't control once the land, I mean, you could put all the regulation and rules and end up property back in your lap again. But our hope and intent is that people develop the properties that they have purchased from municipalities. I'd rather see that happening than the property sitting there forever like they've been for the last 34 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stefanik. Do you have any comment to that comment, Nathan?
No, I 100% agree. It really does no benefit to a township to retain unused properties. I mean, just even in Sault Ste. Marie here, they go through the inventory of properties they have and make sure that anything is put up for sale. Like if they're not using it, basically the rationale is the same. It really does no good to have an unused property. If it's possible that somebody might develop it and increase the assessment value, I mean that's really the goal, is ultimately to collect taxes on a property. And so I 100% agree.
Any further questions from Councillor Perroff?
Yes, I'm kind of looking at, did you have a chance to review the 2021 budget and how it compares to what's the 2020 season? Or is that within your scope?
No, it would not be in my scope. The 2021 budget would be in the 2021 audit.
Okay, so if I could follow up, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
The budget to me, it seems pretty good, the 2020. In your opinion, do you see any fields or areas that kind of lack significantly or we could be improving on moving forward?
Yeah, you know what? The main ones that I've seen in municipalities in Northern Ontario is the environmental and the transportation. I mean roads, sewers, landfills. I mean those are the areas that are causing the the biggest grief and the greatest cost. So having those areas managed very well, which I think that the township's doing well at that and is being proactive. Those are the areas to really focus on going forward.
Okay, thank you. Those are the three areas we do need significant amount of work though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paroff. Any further questions from council? I do have a few notes just to make. I'm not sure if I didn't get the updated, if there was another updated version, but my numbers aren't matching up with what you have presented tonight, Nathan.
Okay, you know what? There was a late change.
Okay, because I'm talking about from the accumulated surplus on note 11.
Right. Yeah.
Quite a significant change in the numbers that I have.
Right. Yeah. And that was me looking at it after I sent it to Gail and realizing something didn't look right. So I did make that change, but I just made that change a few hours ago when I was doing my final review for this meeting.
Okay, so the numbers that you've presented tonight are the correct numbers because the balance of the numbers are still the same. It's the input, the different inputs that changed. And I'm seeing that as well when we were going through the last slides here for the net surplus across the board at the bottom. My numbers didn't match as well.
Yeah, no, I do apologize. We ran into a bit of a software issue, and then we ran into the holiday. And if you ever try to get somebody to do something on a holiday weekend, it's not great. So yeah, I do. The one being presented is the final version.
Okay.
And I will make sure that Gail gets a copy of that and can send that out to the council.
Those were the only notices, the changes that I noticed in the paper documents that I have is from the item 11 and on items 13 near the bottom. Are those the only changes that were made to the document?
Those are the only changes. Yes, correct.
Okay. If I could we have page 13 brought back up just so I can.
Page 13.
Sorry, it's note 13. That's page 21 and 22.
Yeah.
Just when you're going through the talking about the surpluses, I was having a bit of difficulty catching up because my numbers aren't matching up.
Right. Yeah. This would be the one in the one note, and in this note is where I found that numbers were coming in incorrectly. So I did have to make those updates.
Okay. And is it standard? That's the first time that I've heard tonight that, like, I understand that accounting is to ensure the integrity of the bookkeeping and the integrity of the corporation doing its business. But I had never heard that number being given before, the $80,000 bracket. Has that always been 80,000, or does it change from time to time?
Yes, it can go, like last year it was higher. It really is a benchmark based on either your revenues or expenses. So in this case, 2% is the benchmark that we use, 2% of expenses. Okay, so yeah, you will see that number fluctuate, but generally, yeah, I know that sometimes people don't disclose it, but we generally should be disclosing that that information because a lot of people would make decisions on these financial statements, and it's a vital piece of information to have.
Right, okay, and then with it being 2% of expenses, I can see then why last year it was
Yes,
higher then.
it was
Okay.
higher, correct. Yep.
Okay, those are the only questions I have. Gail, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't have any further questions or comments. Council, do you have any other closing questions or comments? Okay. Then we do have a resolution on the floor tonight to accept the financial statements that were presented. Go ahead, Melissa.
I just have a question for Nathan in regards to the surplus. So when you take, when you flip it back to a modified accrual, the
Yep.
surplus is actually 106,000. So if council decided they want to put that 106,000 into reserve for the 2020 year, would we still be able to do that now that you've presented the statements?
Yes, you could do that. You could, because really the overall income statement and balance sheet would not change. It would simply be an allocation of equity. So if the mayor and council would like to make additional allocations to reserve, that would be fine even with the approval of these statements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Nathan. Okay, I do have a motion on the floor. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. John and Drago. Moved by John Paroff, second by Drago Stefanic. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornepayne does hereby accept the consolidated financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2020, as prepared and presented by BDO Canada LLP. And any further comment on the motion? I put it to a vote. Those in favor? And that's carried, none opposed. Well, I thank you, Nathan, for powering through with us and putting the extra work in over the weekend to get it done. This is, as we know, a bit later in the year, and we would like to get ourselves on target for next year to ensure that the following council coming in 2022 at the end has a good solid foundation to move forward with.
Yep.
So with all the issues that we've encountered with COVID, it's moving forward, and I'm glad that you were able to present tonight.
Yes, and I look forward to coming back to Hornepayne one day. We have found that these audits are a lot more efficient in person, and I much prefer it that way. So I thank everybody for their time tonight, and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Have a good night as well.
Thank you.
So on our agenda, Gil, it's not showing till 7:05. Are they able to start early or yes?
Yep,
Okay,
they should be arriving momentarily.
okay, just for council, does anyone would like a 5-minute break right now while we're getting set up for the next presentation? We can do that if you like. No one everyone seems okay. Okay, we'll just continue on then. And is both Gary and Navreet going to be here tonight, Gail? Yes, okay. Good evening, Navreet. Nice to have you in Hornepayne virtually again.
Hi, how is everyone?
Warm. It's warm here today. And
Oh yeah?
yes, yes. That's if you see my hair blowing, I've got a fan on in my hot little office here.
Yeah, it's like 40 degrees here too today.
Yeah. Hornepayne, it's never been a place where you've really needed air conditioning, but I have to say over the last 3 summers, I have had heat waves where I've considered it each time. I'm like, maybe it's time for air conditioning. When you get relief when you go grocery shopping, I think it might be time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just waiting for Gary to come on.
Yep, should be on in a second.
Hello, Gary. I'm glad to have you join our council meeting. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yes. So you had public consultation in our community last Tuesday and everything went well, I hope?
Well, I think it was from my perspective, it was a good discussion. I mean, we had the opportunity to, explain the different things that, you're having to deal with currently and in the future. And there wasn't an awful lot of questions at the end, which I think perhaps we did a good job of explaining things. So it was good from our perspective. Hopefully you've received, Mayor, reasonable feedback on the process.
Well, I've received only what that you've given me, not from our town people. We've tried to open up as much consultation as we can so people, and of course I wasn't sure whether or not to attend because I don't want people to ever feel like they can't speak freely because I'm there, and I'd rather people just speak freely and let's get decisions made that work for everyone. So
that's very fair.
Okay, so I'll just hand it off to you, Gary, for your presentation this evening, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Yeah, I think, Navreet, are you taking control or?
I can. Can I get access to share my screen?
I'm not sure who's doing it.
Yeah, it's coming there shortly.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect.
So for the most part, Madam Mayor, it's a summary of what we've done to date, just as a refresher on a number of different things that we talked about. and just a real high-level summary of the public meeting that we had. So if we proceed through, once again, happy to answer any questions as I'm moving through. If anybody wants to stop me, ask a question, I'd rather deal with it at that moment. It's probably easier for everybody than trying to remember at the end. So if we start off at the beginning, obviously, we were asked to undertake a number of things on your behalf. Obviously, looking at the current and the future water and wastewater system capital needs. That's an important part of the legislation which is evolving. And because your financial plan that you must file to the province very shortly, deals with looking forward at least 6 years. That's what we've done. We've looked out over a number of years at both the operating side and your capital needs in order to really take a look at a set of rates that balance moving ahead with infrastructure renewal and such, while trying to keep the rates at a reasonable level for the constituents. So we're looking at the cost recoveries. I'll touch on that. We looked at the new rates that will be needed over the next 10 years. And we've also looked, as part of the rates, one of the things that I think was in staff's mind, and I'm sure in council's mind, how are our rates structured relative to others? And obviously you don't have meters. About 85% of Ontario municipalities use meters to track individual rates. But in your particular case, you don't have the meters. And I'll refresh a brief conversation that we had together, as well as a conversation that we had with the public during that public information center. At the end of this, and as we've now filed with you, there's the formal financial plan, which must be submitted to the province. While through the Safe Drinking Water Act, every 5 years you must apply to be licensed to run your water system. So that there's 5 different things that you must submit. 4 of them are more engineering, technical, performance related. One of them is the financial plan. And as you'll see on tonight's agenda, we've completed. They have a specific formula or format that we must submit it on, and that's what we provided to you. Next slide, please, Navreet. So just as I talked about, I think there was, I think it was a good public consultation. We did invite many times for any additional questions. We received 1 question, and really that was with respect to providing metering for only commercial customers. And my answer to that is, where in many municipalities that maybe have flat rates, such as what you do, whether they meter the big industries and such. And yes, they'll meter the big guys. In your particular case, you do have bigger guys. I mean, the schools have higher consumption. You've got the hospital. But for the most part, you don't have an awful lot of customers that really sway the rates one way or another. So it's something that could be done, but once again, there's a cost to implement, a cost to annually monitor, etc. And it's a weighing factor whether that really benefits the municipality or not. In total, there was 12 people on the call, Navreet and myself, as well as Gail was on it, and then 2 of the councillors, leaving about 7 members of the public that were there to listen to the presentation and once again to ask any questions that they might have. So that was the summary of our evening on the 29th. Next slide, please. So we talked about your current user profile and the way that you've set up your relationships in between. You know, you charge residential customers a standardized charge for the most part, And then we get into commercial customers and then the hospital and the school boards and stuff. So part of what we undertook was to look at another northern municipality where we had very detailed information on their metering. And we used that data as a basis for comparing your municipality. Obviously, things such as school size, we made adjustments to recognize that, you know, perhaps a certain school size in your municipality is only half the size in that other municipality, and we made adjustments for that. The hospital in your municipality versus the other, yours is smaller than theirs. So we went through to attempt in looking at appropriate adjustments to recognize that. And so that we've come back with a level of customer base that we thought was appropriate. And for the most part, I'd say 98% of the rate structure is not unreasonable that you impose today. So I think whenever it was set up many years ago, the relationships, and maybe they were based on metered information, maybe they were based on engineering design criteria, but I think that a lot of the rates that you have today are actually in quite appropriate. And if we go to the next slide, I apologize for the size. What we've provided here is the annual, your current water rates. And why we've done that is because we've looked at your rates, the relationship between those rates today. So if we, for example, if we look at residential at $1,057 or annually, or $1,057.90 versus a commercial, which is at just under $1,490. If you do the relationship, how much they're paying as a percentage of a residential, they're paying 40% higher, or they're paying the equivalent of 1.4 single detached units. And if you take a look at many of the other customers, so if we jump down, we look at the churches. Some of the churches are running at like 0.7 or 0.8, the flows compared to a residential. And if you look at the schools are running significantly higher, running at 29 for the Algoma District School and 25 for the Huron. So those are your relationships. So it's all based on a single detached equivalent. And I'll just say that a lot of municipalities who don't do the metering and set up their rate structures, they do look at those relationships as kind of a marker on how to set the rates. The third column, which is the proposed weighting, you can see as we move through, there's many of them that are exactly the way that you've stated. So we've looked with the proposed weightings of that other northern municipality. It's bigger than yourself, as I've noted, but we've looked at their flows, and a lot of the relationships are basically extremely comparable. You can see there's a couple of areas where we've kind of grayed them out. You're not using those currently, and to some extent, they generally fall into your commercial, your 1.4 single detached equivalent categories. So there's a number of the grayed areas that basically you're not using right now, and it doesn't look like they really need to be in place. So we'd actually recommend somewhat of a reduction in the number of your categories. Now you see there's a couple of areas where there's an adjustment. If you look at the hospital, for example, that's probably the one that's the most significant, and it's increasing by about 1.5 times. It's going from 13.6 up to about 34. We take a look at the Legion. Once again, this is based on metered information from another municipality. It'd be tracking in and around 2 instead of 3 single detached equivalent, and looking at hotels, motels, and trying to find similar types of relationships, we'd see something higher than what your charges are currently. At the bottom, you can see that we've identified a grocery store, which were in the previous commercial category, but we have looked at data associated with them. They are higher, so we've recommended a 2.5 for that. And then the rest of them are really municipally owned facilities. We've got the arena, curling club, fire hall, township hall, library, the airport, and the public works facility. Once again, we've tried to track the relative comparators with the other municipality, and we would suggest this single detached equivalent be added in. Now, right now, through the property taxes, the services are provided, and to some extent, it's a bit of an accounting adjustment and such, but we would probably say it should be clear that certain amounts from the tax supported budget should be moved over to the water and the wastewater supported budgets, just so you can directly see those transfers. And actually, with those extra amounts, if we would have removed them, you'd see basically about between a 4 and a 5% reduction in the rates. On the other side, if we include them, what we've recommended is actually increasing the transfers to the reserves, which will help to pay for the capital program that we'll talk about in a minute. So you've got a sizable capital program. You also, as we'll show, once you get past the 10-year planning horizon, you've got an awful lot of infrastructure that ultimately will have to be addressed, some form of replacement or a renewal. So what we've suggested is for those particular items, we start transferring the money directly into the program, and that money goes directly into the reserve funds. So it's made available for financing your capital infrastructure. Next slide. So we talked about the infrastructure, and you can see here, and this is this capital plan. Excuse me. We had discussions with our friends from Aqua, and they were very good in analyzing the infrastructure needs, taking a look at performance, taking a look at age, and recommending a capital program that the municipality should be considering over the next 10 years. You can see on the water side, we're just below $1.4 million. And then over that same 10-year planning horizon, for wastewater, we're over $2 million. So we've looked through the calculations, we've done the planning. We would determine that the water side of things can probably be paid for from the reserves. That's not only what you've got some balances right now, roughly about $150,000, $170,000 in each of your water and your wastewater reserves. So you got a little bit to start with, but we do need to transfer money into those reserves and then draw that money to help pay for the capital. So we can fully pay for the water over that planning horizon, but you can see the wastewater, we can probably pay for just under $600,000 from the reserves. We can get a little bit of government grants, about $165,000, but the municipality is going to have to issue over $1.2 million in debentures. So you're going to have to get loans, maybe from Infrastructure Ontario or whatever, in order to pay for the infrastructure, and then it'll be paid through the rates annually over the next X number of years. So we are seeing that the wastewater is one that's probably going to need some external financing because from an affordability perspective, you don't have the cash on hand. Next slide, please. Now, to put that capital program in perspective, you can see that if we look at the amount of investment you've had in the capital infrastructure, you've almost invested $30 million in your water system and $22 million in the wastewater system. So that's about $52 million for your customers. the water, as you've noted, and there's a slight difference in this number because this is not inflated. The other one we were looking at over the next 10 years, there's inflation, which will peck away at the capital numbers, but this is in today's dollars. You can see there's about $1.3 million. That's only 3% of your infrastructure. So over the next 10 years, the plan is to replace only 3% of the infrastructure. And so at that rate of investment, it would probably take you, approaching 300 years to replace all of your infrastructure. That's a little bit light, I would say considerably light. And so that over time, you'll need to turn your mind to looking at perhaps more of an investment over the long term in the infrastructure. Now, maybe we can get government grants. I'm sure that that's an area that we've talked to the province that probably many of the northern municipalities will need a greater level of assistance in order to address this. And we will continue to have that dialogue with the province. So we've been doing that. On the wastewater side, you can see the $2 million roughly is roughly about 10% of the infrastructure. So that translates into a 100-year plan, replacement plan. Now, if you consider that a lot of the infrastructure was built in the 70s, the infrastructure is roughly in the range of 50 years old. And at best, the infrastructure, if you talk to the engineers, maybe lasts as much as 100 years. So we're probably 50% the way through the useful life of that infrastructure. So it is something over time the municipality will have to continue to work with, look at asset management plan, reach out to the province, start, as I've said, we've been communicating on behalf of our northern municipality clients, Northern Ontario, that there'll be grants that'll be needed to assist funding some of these expenditures, and there'll be the need to do that. And if you look at these costs on a per customer basis, part of what we need to communicate to the province, if you look at water, for example, you've invested $51,000 per customer, not per capita, per customer, in order to get the water into the building. And then to take the effluent and then treat it, there's another $38,000 per customer. So you've invested about $89,000 per customer for running your water and your wastewater system. And that's very significant. That's where the big cost item will be that all municipalities in Ontario are facing, is that the water and the wastewater systems are very expensive to run. So I'll leave that. In the first 10 years, you're actually in not bad shape. And we've dealt with this $3.2 million capital plan, as I've noted. If we go to the next slide. So if we look at your forecast on your expenditures, so on your operating budget, you can see the light gray represents, for the most part, Aqua's cost. Day-to-day expenditures of running the system, the water treatment, if you have water main breaks, cleansing, they have to clean the pipes and such. So you can see the most significant portion, and it's about $462,000 for 2022, is going to the day-to-day operating costs. We then have existing debt charges of about $65,000, and then on top of it, we're talking about the growth-related transfers, so about another $200,000. So as we move out over time, you can see where the sizable amount of increase is going to be on the infrastructure side, the capital-related infrastructure. If we take a look on the next slide, the wastewater, you can see similar type of thing where we're seeing most of the growth will be on the infrastructure side of the budgets, and that'll be the driver. And you're not different than 99% of Ontario municipalities. It's the capital infrastructure and where the province is moving us towards with the legislation in order to fund financially or look to a level of stability and sustainability of these systems. So that's part of where their legislation is taking us. Next slide. So with the operating costs, the capital costs, et cetera, that we presented, we're looking at roughly in the early years, the first year we would recommend about a 4%, just below 4% increase. That actually is a 0% increase for water. We're trying to move up the wastewater side because it's the one that'll need more infrastructure financing. So we put a 10% increase on the wastewater. Now you can see it's only running at about 70%. The water bill versus the wastewater bill. The wastewater is about 70% of the water. So 10% on a smaller amount translates into a lesser dollar amount. Anyway, long story short, we'd be looking at about 3.9% increase in the first year. The next couple of years running at probably in and around 3%. And then the last couple of years moving back towards a more inflationary rate by the end of the period. We feel this is reasonable given the infrastructure that Aqua have identified, given the expenditures that we anticipate on the operating side. Those right now are what we're suggesting you consider into the future. Next slide. So this is the really summarizing. We've given you the water and wastewater costs, for infrastructure, what we anticipate for your capital investments. These are summarized in the detailed background study that we presented to you. We have to prepare that financial plan that has to go to the province. So we'd ask you to consider the financial plan and approve it. And once you approve it, then tomorrow it can be sent to the province. It also has to be set up on your website officially in order to meet the requirements of the regulation 45307. So these are actually the step-by-step recommendations. Approve it. You need to provide the notice and it's advertised. Send it off to the province, so it must be submitted. You're actually a little bit late in submitting it, but staff have reached out and talked with the province. They're okay to allow for this extension for filing. And we'll need a resolution, and I think that's before you tonight, in order to approve that, and that has to be sent along with the financial plan. I think that's the end of the presentation. Hopefully I haven't moved too quickly. I know that we've talked in the past, and so we've just hit the highlights for you this evening, but happy to talk about anything else you'd like to. And I'll hand it back to you, Madam Mayor, for your guidance.
Thank you for your presentation, Gary. And yes, I know I have a few questions. So I'll open it up for the floor to council first for questions. None from John, I'm not seeing any. Okay, the one question I have is in the financial plan of Appendix 3 and 3.4, where we're going to submit, are you adding up the increases, the annual percentage change, or I'm just trying to find the increases that are listed in the document here off of page 10 on your presentation.
So if I might, Madam Mayor,
yes, go ahead.
The financial, the rate study that we provide to you is really the one that you want to look at in order to take a look at the expenditures, the financing, the capital plan, and the rates. The financial plan that the province deems that legislation 45307 is an interim piece of legislation. Now I know it was passed in 2007. Province hasn't been moving as fast perhaps as they should have, but it's an interim piece of legislation. And what they've done is they've required municipalities to basically take the information we've prepared for you on the rate study and translate it into a financial statement format. I like to say that they've translated it into P7Es, public sector accounting. So if you look at that and try and relate to those expenditures directly to the rates, you're a better accountant than I am. And in fact, I'm not an accountant, I'm an economist. You have to look at actually the difference between the two plans is the rate study is done on a modified accrual basis, and the financial plan, which is basically the financial statement format, is completely different. And the numbers are very difficult. If you want to look at the rate increases and look at the numbers, extremely difficult to reconcile.
Okay, so from that, I guess what I'm concerned about is when we undertook, I didn't realize that we could be possibly tying in 10 years of councils into rates. And by passing a financial plan, that's possibly what we can be doing here.
Excellent question. So number one, you're not tying the council into anything at this particular point. Through reading the legislation and the backgrounder with the regulation, they call it a living document, which is to say that your needs, your capital expenditures, your operating will change on a year-to-year basis. So whether you pass 4.1% instead of 3.9, you pass 3.5% instead of 3.9, that's subject to your annual budget process. What they're saying is if there's anything significant that changes, so let's say we had $1.4 million for water and all of a sudden it becomes a $6 million capital plan in the first year, or sorry, $6 million capital plan, that may be significant enough for them to ask you to revisit your financial plan. If we're talking 1.4 million as we presented for water, and it happens to go to 1.6 or drop to 1.2, that would not be significant enough for them to A, come back and ask you to redo the financial plan, or B, say, oh, no, you have to go with 3.9%. You can't go with 3.5. So I'm just saying that you're not, this is a directional type of analysis. It gives you the direction, but it doesn't hold you to, you don't have to pass 10 years worth of rates tonight. That's still part of the annual budget process.
Okay.
So the key words on it, Madam Mayor, is that they call it a living document.
Right. And we have to create another living document in 5 years from now, correct?
Yes, that's the requirements of the legislation.
Right. I would just, I'm talking to council here, and this is no disrespect, Gary, to you and your colleagues at all. I know that you've done I like what's been produced here, but I would like to have documents that we do follow and that we don't, like, so that council actually uses these, because there's been a lot of your hard work put into creating these rates and gives us an area where we can point to get this infrastructure upgraded. And to think that we're only going to put such a minimal amount over the next 10 years, it just feels like coasting. And as I say that, I'm wondering, with your other clients, Gary, is there a way that we can band together with a resolution to the province that we need bigger funds? We need, like, we're going to leave future councils handicapped. They're not going to be able to come up with $4 million.
So through you, Madam Mayor, those are great observations. So number one, keep in mind that those rate increases, we've also increased the transfers from the tax supported over to increase the actual revenues in those. So those are the basic increases to your single family home occupant. Okay, so we have increased the revenues. That's what's happening. On the side of northern municipalities or all municipalities, I think through the different associations such as AMO or Roma. I apologize. I'm not sure if there's a northern.
NOM and NOMA. I actually wrote them down as well. So,
though, number one, those are the organizations to move forward for the province. Now, I have worked with all those associations. If you, I think I had mentioned that I was part of the original Walkerton exercise. I was in 2 of the 6 expert panels. I've worked with AMO, I've worked with the Municipal Finance Officers, Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers, Ontario Waterworks Association, Ontario Water Association. I've worked with all of them. These are consistent messages we've been putting forth. And once again, we would be more than happy to work with any of the groups, any and all of the groups, in order to advance some of these. And I think I've already mentioned, when the province was looking to implement these, this movement ahead with the regulations, I said to the province, 80% of the municipalities could probably make it over, 5 to 10 years of implementation. There's 10% that can probably make it over a longer period of time. You just have to allow them to stage up. And there'll be 10% of the municipalities that will not be able to go to full cost pricing, which means you pay for 100% without provincial assistance. But the 10% of the municipalities represent, less than 1% of the population across Ontario. So that my voice has been out there for many, many years, and I'm happy to work continuously with the associations to continue to present that. As you're going through, we've got an awful lot of information. We can, once again, assist in making those observations collectively for the different segments of the province. So I'm there to help, Madam Mayor, for any of the associations. So.
Okay, thank you for that, Gary. Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, thank you. Excellent report, Gary. I enjoy reading the report, analyzing it. I'm respectful to say this. I think the numbers especially in 2027, 2028, 2020 are very unrealistic, in my opinion. With the factors going in, I think they're way off base. I think that those areas, in my humble opinion, be looking at about 4, 5, 6%. Again, it's a solid report, so I'm going on your report. I'm following through your report. I think, if anything, those numbers will increase from the numbers that you set for 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Excellent report. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, thank you very much. And I think over time, I think that's, we base the capital infrastructure based on the best observations that Aqua have right now. So that's something that maybe they need to take it from maybe 5,000 feet and take it down to 2,000 feet, be a little more granular. And I'm absolutely right. We can consider that at another time. But it's good observation.
Any further comments from council on the either document or the question, or for the presentation, sorry? So I do have a question for you, Gary. When you sit, now that we have this, and it was interesting because I couldn't remember back 5 years ago whether we had done this or what it looked like. And I was thinking it probably happened just before I got on council. I know Gail and I had a brief discussion about it. But how do we utilize these documents moving forward?
Good question. I focus more on the rate study once again. If you take a look at the rate study, we've the components that are in there is taking a look at your capital plan, and we've looked at the funding of the capital. Some of the funding comes from reserves, which is actually transferring money from your rates into the reserves and then into the capital plan, so we can kind of smooth out the expenditures tend to bounce around. We've also calculated the potential debt charges. All of that comes down then to your operating budget. So what we've provided, Madam Mayor, is a capital budget, a financing plan for the capital budget for water and wastewater, and we've identified the impacts onto your operating budget and the impacts onto your rates. So for the most part, we've given you the components that you would now, subject to the CAO and the treasurer updating them for any minor adjustments, but I think we've given you all of the key elements for your annual budget process that they can look at, adjust, and update the calculations. If they need to give us a call and advise them on something, more than happy to help them out.
Okay, thank you for that, Gary. That's all the questions that I have. Does council have further questions before I put the motion up? I don't see any. I guess I do, sorry, Gary, I just do have one last question. So because so this document, usually we should be preparing to have it done in 5 years from now, so that we don't run into this area. And it is COVID and we've had a lot of extreme measures. And I don't say this to any of our staff. I'm not asking that question because of that, just trying to prepare forward. When would it be advisable to start before the due date?
Well, you have a drop dead deadline for issuing your license. The province requires you 6 months before that to file all the documents. So right now you're past that 6th month, but you haven't exceeded the time what they need for the license. So you're still okay. So if you're going to meet you're almost a year ahead of your license is when you should start this detailed process.
A year ahead of the license. So this license currently will expire then in 2026, correct then?
No, your license, well, yes, that's correct. Yes.
So then we would want to start in 2025 of January 2025. That would give us enough?
Absolutely.
Okay. And thank you for that final question. Before I open the floor for the motion, Gail, did you have any comments or questions you'd like to ask?
Thank you. Just one question. Would you recommend a rate study be done again, like every time before a water financial plan?
Really what we've done in the rate study is give you a 10-year operating budget and capital budget for the water and the wastewater. If you, so it's part of your annual budgeting process. If you need us to assist, it's probably a small amount of time that we would spend just to help you along, because we've got all the basics now. So either, if you're comfortable in handling on your own, great. If you need us, reach out. We're more than happy, and it wouldn't take much for us to update the calculations for your budget process. Okay, and if that's a comfort level, we're more than happy to help out.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for that. Okay, any further comments, questions? If I can get a mover and a seconder for the motion on the floor that you have in your package. Peter and John. Okay, moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by John Paroff. Be it resolved that council does hereby accept the water and wastewater rate study report as prepared and presented by Watson and Associates Economists Limited. Any further questions, comments on the motion? There being none, I put it to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And the next motion is for the financial plan. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that council does hereby adopt the water financial plan number 226-301 as prepared for the township by Watson and Associates Economists Limited. I apologize for that. Any further discussion or comment on the motion? There being none, I put it to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. Okay, well, thank you so much, Gary and Navreet, for being here this evening with us and virtually in Hornepayne, and for all your hard work. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to point out the staff were fantastic in assisting us, and we really appreciated it. It went very, very smooth. So
Great. That's always good to hear. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
have a good evening. Thank you.
Hey, council, we have just a few items to wrap up our special meeting. If I can get a mover and a seconder for our confirmatory bylaw. Peter and John. Moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by John Paroff. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1864, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at their special meeting of council held on Monday, July 5th, 2021, be hereby read a first and second time and considered read a third time and finally passed. Those in favor?
Can you hear me? Cheryl, can you hear me?
I can hear you right now, yes?
I'm sorry, I'm frozen on the screen. I agree. My thing is frozen, so, but I could hear you, I could see you. My screen is frozen, but I could hear your communications.
Oh,
Thank you.
it's not frozen on my screen at all.
Well,
You're not
okay.
frozen at all. I saw your hand and everything.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, and the final resolution is our motion to close. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and Peter. Okay, moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Peter Kistemaker. Be it resolved that we do adjourn the special meeting of council held on Monday, July 5th, 2021 at 7:32 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried. Well, thank you, council. I hope everyone can cool off and find something cool to do and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, good night, everyone.
Night.